Hey everyone, it's Leadership Loading. I'm your host, Jason McLaren. Today we're talking about leadership in the military and life as a military couple. I've got Patrick Bonner and Allie Delury, and both are Air Force veterans and podcast hosts and world travelers. And I just want to welcome to the show. How are y'all today?
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so let's get started. Tell us about, your military career. I know both y'all have kind of a dynamic difference, so we'll go from there.
Cool. So my name's Allie. I started in the military, the U.S. Air Force, in 2012. My first duty assignment was Aviano, Italy, which is where I met my now fiance, Patrick. So my job in the military is pretty robust and unique. I started as a public affairs officer, which, as many people know, is kind of like PR for the military. So we have a variety of different roles as it relates to communication, both internally and externally. And I got my start in Italy while Benghazi was going on. So that was my first international global crisis, and I was only 22 years old, so it was quite the jump into international public relations. After that assignment, I relocated to San Antonio, Texas, because I was selected to be a combat camera officer, which was by far my favorite assignment. It's a very small squadron within the U.S. Air Force. It's essentially war correspondence for the military. So I was in charge of training combat cameramen, both on the photo and video side, to embed with aerial and ground teams in the military. So I did that for 3 years. That was super fun. I got to deploy to Eastern Europe when Russia invaded Ukraine. I got to deploy to Africa to combat some of the Al-Shabaab narrative going on there. So I got to do so much cool stuff, and it was unique for me being in that leadership role as a woman, because my squadron was made up mostly of men who had combat experience or significant camera and video experience. So it was interesting for me. It was a huge step up in terms of the way that I used to lead, and it's something that I still hold with me today.
Cool. Nice job.
Thanks.
My name's Patrick. I was a tactical air control party officer. I didn't start out that way. I joined the Air Force ROTC when I was in college to get the ability to pay for school. I lost my scholarship for being a little bit of a ne'er-do-well my freshman year. So I joined the ROTC. I commissioned as an officer. I actually had a pilot slot initially, and I bungled that. My first outing as an officer, as a lieutenant, I went through a thing called IFS, which is initial flight screening, and I found out that I suck at flying right after the Air Force did.
Oh, man.
So they knew right before I did that I wasn't going to be a pilot. So I had to figure out something else that I was going to do for the Air Force. So I applied to be a TAC-P officer. And I went through a 5-day selection. You know, you've seen movies, they yell at you, they scream at you, they sleep deprive you, they work you pretty hard. And I ended up getting selected for that. After I made it through all that training, I went to Italy, where I met Allie. And from there, basically a TAC-P officer, you are trained to do all things air power for typically the Army conventional operations or special operations. And you embed with different teams, and you basically handle all things air power for them, specifically kinetic airstrikes. Whether that's in the tactical operations center or out on patrol, embedded in the team. So I did that for about 7 years. I was in Italy, I was in Korea, I was in Fort Drum, I had in northern New York. I had 2 combat deployments, one to Afghanistan, one to Iraq, and then had a small deployment to Jordan, which was actually a lot of fun. I got out in 2017 as a captain, because once you start hitting higher rank, you start losing kind of tactical leadership and operational impact. And I didn't necessarily care for pushing papers behind a desk. That wasn't why I signed up for the Air Force. So I ended up separating from the Air Force in 2017. Now I'm traveling the world.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, TAC-P, much respect for you guys. I looked at combat control when I was a firefighter, and
cool.
kind of looked at it, but yeah, I didn't even get to go to the the indoctrination part to try to even get to that. But
Yeah,
rested.
no, that's not a lot of fun. Those indocs, those are
Yeah,
they're pretty mean to you.
yeah. And Allie, you're still a reservist?
I am, yeah. I left active duty in 2017 for many of the same reasons that Pat brought up. But I still do some public affairs work for international bases, so primarily Europe. But really anywhere the Air Force needs me at any time, I can kind of sign up to do a short tour of deployment with them.
Awesome. So what are y'all doing now after your
Well,
military?
trying to get back home, but specifically for work, I am a comedian, and Allie is a video and photographer and content creator. I don't mean to answer for you, but
yeah. I mean, right now we're both kind of we quit our jobs in the States to come out to Australia back in November to kind of pursue our passions, which for Pat is comedy and for me is content creation, photo, video work, as it relates to travel. So we've been doing that since November. But of course, as you've seen in the news, Australia was hit with bushfires a couple months ago. So that kind of changed our plans. And now there's a global pandemic. So we were planning on being here close to a year, but given everything that's going on, we are trying to head back to the States. We'll see if we get there, but
yeah,
it's been an adventure. Maybe not the one that we planned to have, but regardless, it's been a wild ride.
Definitely. This episode's being recorded during the 2019 or sorry 2020 COVID epidemic. If you're listening after that, but yeah, lots of stuff going on with travel and people being stuck in places that they're not usually at. So how what led to you guys basically working for yourselves? It sounds like, I mean, the stand-up comedy, you got to do all your own gigs, right?
oh yeah, so, it's a lot of writing. It's quite a bit of humility too. I'll tell you, not all shows go well, so you got to get very, very comfortable speaking to silence. And once you get comfortable with that, you tend to start writing better jokes and performing better. So it's been kind of a wild ride. I started doing it about 3 years ago in Colorado, and there's a very active scene, active stand-up comedy scene there. And I was working full time. I was doing comedy every night, and I mean, from the first time I tried it, I kind of fell in love with the challenge. And I think that's been a consistent theme throughout my life is trying to find the next challenge. And luckily, with stand-up comedy, the challenge is never complete. There's always another joke to write. There's always another
I
gig to
bet.
do. There's always something ahead of you. There's more always ahead of you than behind you. So it's fit my personality quite well.
Yeah, I get, being on military and period, and then being on the combat side, you've got to have that sense of personality and uh, uh, humorous, side of you. So
Yeah, absolutely. I found while I was leading TAC Ps, this is a type A alpha male dominated career field, um, where strength is respected, and I found humor was a quick way to gain trust and project strength as a leader without like being overbearing. I found, and TAC Ps are generally some of the funniest people I've ever met. So leading them and being able to make them laugh, I found was a very quick and easy shortcut to being an effective leader for them.
awesome. And Allie, what are you doing? I know you're involved in several content creation things, semester at sea and your military stuff. So can you tell us?
Yeah. I mean, it's the military is great, and it remains the greatest thing that I've ever done with my life in terms of the opportunities I've been afforded just on the leadership side. But it does get a little mundane, and it does become a little, I don't really know the word, not boring, but I think people get very comfortable in certain roles, especially as you make rank. And I know for me, before the military, I was a television reporter, and so I'm very attracted to jobs and careers that are kind of high tempo, high stress, and very competitive. So I missed that aspect of civilian life, and luckily I had a career before the military, so it was a lot easier for me to break away and say, okay, I want to try to pursue something on my own, whether it's working for myself and just doing content creation on a gig by gig basis, or maybe working for a civilian company that has a little more emphasis on digital content. I wasn't really afraid to break away from that. But I mean, there are a lot of people where the military is all they know. So breaking away from that is sometimes a little bit more difficult. And I think the stress of what the other side looks like it can be too much, and it can convince them to stay in longer than they want to. So for me, it was an easy decision. Once I finished up with combat camera, I kind of had the conversation within myself where I was like, I don't know if it gets better than this. I've had the two best jobs in the world. I got to live abroad in Italy. I got to lead a team of combat cameramen all over the world. That's the top, for me in terms of what I wanted to get out of the military. So once I found myself kind of compromising what I wanted to do just to stay in or just to get certain positions that were of greater rank or whatever, I realized, I'd rather just follow my passion and see where that track takes me. And luckily, as a reservist, if I ever do want to go back, or if I want to, if I miss certain aspects of the military, I still have one foot in, so I could still do that on the side.
Awesome. So what's it like being a couple in the military? Were you all together before you got out?
Kind of.
Yeah.
So we met in 2013, and we dated while we lived in Italy, and then I moved to Korea, which is almost the complete opposite side of the globe. And so we went through a period where we weren't dating,
Yeah.
and then we reconnected back in 2016.
Yeah.
And from there, it's been pretty great. And so when we reconnected, I was on my way out of the Air Force. I'd filed up my paperwork, and I was still waiting they call it ETS, which I can't remember what it stands for, but it's when you separate.
Mm-hmm.
And Allie was competing for another job, but was also considering getting out. And so we were just weighing what our next step was going to be, but we knew we wanted to be together. So we just figured, however this will roll, as long as we end up together, it'll probably be all right.
Yeah. But I mean, being a couple in the military, obviously there's a lot of perks. I mean, obviously the distance is not great, but it does help to have someone in your life who has done military and can understand some of the jargon and some of the sacrifices and all of that. I think it helps that we both were military, because it there were a lot of days where I would be frustrated, and when we were deployed, sometimes we'd just call each other up and talk about our days, and it's easier to do that with someone who already has that experience.
Yeah, but there were some low points. It was hard. We have had a substantial amount of time away from each other, which makes this Australia adventure kind of that much more important to us as a couple, I think.
Yeah,
because we feel like we've earned it through the deployments and the time apart and kind of the sacrifices we've had to make on behalf of our relationship for the military. It makes taking the jump on a great adventure kind of easier.
Yeah, because we spent over half of our relationship apart, and then we decided to move to Australia, get a van, and spend literally 24/7 together in the confines of a vehicle, which has been fun. But I think a lot of people were probably wondering, like, oh, that's different than what they have been doing. I wonder how it's going to work out for them. And so far, it's been awesome.
Great. It's a good way to figure out if the engagement is going to last.
Good test run of a marriage.
Yeah, it's that whole work hard and play hard, and I think that's a good play off of that. And my wife and I had to live in a camper for 14 months while we built our house, so it's I can understand the close proximity and all that. So.
Yeah, man, it's a nice little communication. I don't want to call it a challenge because it's been pretty good.
All right. So when you get back, what's the plan when you get back to the States?
Wow, we've been asking ourselves that like every day since this COVID-19 thing became a global pandemic. Things are changing on the daily. So I mean, the plan is to go back and move to the East Coast, preferably New York City, maybe DC, who knows, but somewhere on the East Coast. But obviously jobs are kind of in a hiring freeze right now because a lot of things are closed, and a lot of companies are wondering what's next or how long this is going to last. So we're going from one adventure that already kind of from the beginning was kind of flexible and like, oh, we'll just go to Australia and we'll figure things out, to now another adventure that unintentionally has become the exact same thing. So we thought that we would have stability and kind of a concrete timeline when we came home, versus when we were traveling in Australia. But now it just sounds like that's been prolonged, and who knows, where we're going to be or what we'll be doing or where we'll go. The only constant is us and the fact that we'll be together through it all. So that's made it worth it and made it easier to deal with. But we have to take bite-sized chunks because we just have no idea what the next day or week is going to look like.
Yeah, so tell me about your podcast, Work Our Way. I think it's pretty cool. I like the comedic take y'all have on some things on there.
Yeah, no, we've had a really good time doing it. Couple of the first bunch of episodes were a little bit tough, figuring out sound engineering. I'm sure you've got a good setup there. Us doing it on the road presented some challenges, but we've had an absolute blast kind of recounting our adventure through Australia, through content creation and through comedy. And our relationship. You were just pretty open and honest, as honest as we can be. It's been a lot of fun. It's been an interesting challenge and exercising a skill set I didn't know Allie was so good at. She got a broadcaster's voice, and you don't hear it when you're sitting next to her every day, and then you turn on the podcast and you're like, holy shit, she's good at this.
No, I think we we weren't sure, because you hear stories of couples that start podcasts and it either works or it doesn't, because it's essentially another job. Like we're working together as business partners now together on this platform that hundreds of people are listening to each week or month or what have you. But I think we make a good team because obviously Pat is the comedian. He's super funny. He's very witty, and he has a way of just thinking about things in a different way than I do. I'm more of a storyteller and a chronological thinker, so I'll take everyone on the journey of what happened in this place and then what happened next or whatever. And then, it's kind of like the play-by-play and the color commentary on a sports broadcast, like Pat will interject when there's a lull, and it's just that part has worked great. And, I think it's been fun. But Work Our Way is actually a play on Work Away, which is how we started our Australian adventure. It's a program where you get free accommodation in exchange for a set of skills. So we did that when we first got to Melbourne, but it ended up being like a horrible, very toxic situation. So we left very quickly and kind of said, what, screw this. We're going to work our way. And that's kind of how that name came about. But yeah, it's just a podcast that talks about our adventure, but hopefully motivates people to maybe take that chance to pursue the thing that they've been wanting to do their whole life. And it's been fun.
Definitely. So for the listeners, what tips you have for them for pursuing what they want to do with their life?
So, I'm sorry, ask that one more time.
What tips do you have for those wanting to pursue their goal or their hobby if they're not?
Oh my God, double down on what you love and what you're good at. There's a certain aspect, I think, you have to meet the dream that's meeting you. And some of that is understanding your skills, understanding like, I'm never going to be a pro basketball player, but I know I'm kind of funny. I know we can have a pretty good conversation that people might want to listen to. I know she's a phenomenal videographer. And so you got to kind of meet the dreams that are meeting you. And when in doubt, double down on yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's essentially what we've been doing this entire trip is when we are at a crossroads, we take a look at the decisions in front of us and we say, okay, what do we have to meet this challenge? And we double down on ourselves and we just keep betting on ourselves. And so far, so good.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So where can we find all your podcasts and your endeavors?
Oh, so our podcast is Work Our Way. Everything is Work Our Way related. So get ready for shotgun blast of Work Our Way. WorkOurWay.com is our website. You can find all of Allie's content. You can find a stand-up clip of me. Any update on stand-up shows, which are obviously all canceled now. But our Instagram is @WorkOurWay, and our email is workourwaypodcast@gmail.com.
And for the younger listeners, we also just got a TikTok, which obviously so many people on the fence, but it is one of the fastest growing platforms in the world right now. So if you just want to see short video content, we're at Work Our Way on TikTok as well.
Definitely TikTok. I'm going to do our plug for ours too. I do all my TikTok for all my endeavors are on there. So check it out.
Nice.
So.
Do you do dancing? Are you one of the dancers on TikTok?
I do. I try.
Nice, dude. I'll have to check that out. I'll definitely check that out.
But yeah, I do, the podcast. I do clips about podcasting and clips about emergency management and that sort of thing, which is my side hustle. So
Cool.
I will add you guys on there and put y'all's links in the show notes.
That'd be
Right
great.
on.
All right. Thanks y'all for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you so much for
Thanks.
having me. This was a blast.
Definitely. Yeah. Y'all have a good one.
All right.
You
See ya.
too.